Hello and welcome back to Archery ASMR, in other words, me reading the World Archery rulebook. Apparently this is quite popular. We've done recurve and barebow, so let's keep on going. Now, I'm not doing compound. We'll keep compound a meme. There's no rules really, apart from a few small things. In fact, I'm going to go to traditional, and maybe longbow if I have time in this video. And the reason is people might not be aware that World Archery actually does have traditional archery. A lot of people who are opponents or critics of World Archery and modern archery think it's all about like washing out the origins of the sport. No, we actually do have a traditional division. It's just not in target archery, and that's kind of a thing we'll talk about a bit right now. So the book we're talking about here is book 4, chapter 22. This covers field and 3D. So the archery you mostly see broadcast in competition is target archery. That's the outdoor range with the circular target, long distance, and also the indoor version, which is the 18-meter standard. That's target archery. Field and 3D are different. For those who haven't done field and 3D, you basically walk through like a forested course where you shoot at targets of varying distances and varying sizes. So it's more dynamic than static target archery, which means you walk around, you deal with obstacles like tree branches and vegetation, you might shoot across water hazards, and the targets may be uphill or downhill, so it's more of a challenge. Field involves shooting at circular targets, different to the standard 10 ring target, but you still shoot at a circular target face. 3D archery involves shooting at a foam shaped target. Often these are animal based, so they're meant to simulate hunting targets, although you can use any 3D target like dinosaurs or gargoyles. So they're meant to simulate the traditional origin of hunting archery and train those skill sets, and this is very popular with the more traditional style of archery. So if you're shooting traditional in any way, you're more likely to enjoy field in 3D. You can of course shoot target, that's quite normal, but barebow, traditional and longbow have their roots in the rule set for field and 3D, which is a separate committee and rule set to target. And we mentioned in barebow that the original barebow rules were not in target, therefore there were no World Archery events which have an official barebow target discipline. The national and regional organizations would make their own rules based on the field book, but not in the target book. So now it's actually in both, but this also includes traditional and longbow. So today we're going to go through the traditional and longbow definitions for equipment, and as with barebow, because these are limited divisions, not unlimited like in longbow, in recurve or in compound, there are far more rules over what is and isn't allowed. As a side note, World Archery isn't the only organization that has 3D and field, and I would even argue that it's not the premier organization which runs 3D and field. There are different organizations and different rule sets, and they may or may not be different. So it's a preamble. This is not the only rule set for field and 3D. This is the World Archery rule set, which is used for any events affiliated with World Archery, as well as the World Archery Field Championships and the 3D Championships. They're different events, and field and 3D tend to have more popularity in Europe, as far as I know. In the US, it's quite popular as well, but it's not run under World Archery rules for many events, and other countries it does vary. But you won't see trad and longbow in target events at World Archery. You will see them far more in the field and 3D championships, if you ever see them broadcast. So there's quite a few things going on here. I will do one more preamble, that is the rules for compound, recurve and barebow are mostly the same for equipment. There's just one general provision for the other divisions, and that is you can't have any range finding assistance. One of the really interesting things with field in 3D is you have unmarked competition. There's marked field where you know the distance to each target. It will say 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters or whatever. But there's also unmarked field and unmarked 3D. 3D by default, I think, is unmarked. Field can be marked or unmarked, and that means they don't tell you the distance. So you can't have anything on your bow or any piece of equipment that can help you range the target. So you have to estimate using your intuition and your own visual cues how far the target is, and therefore you can adjust for range. But you don't have any tools that can calculate range for you. So it's a bit more purer, closer to the traditional style of archery. This is also why in the championships, especially the team events, why compound and to a lesser extent Berber have a very big advantage, because if compound gets their range wrong, they'll still hit a perfect shot because the drop is not much. Barebow also shoots quite high velocity, so they can get away with some errors, but the trad and longbow are far more punishing if you can't calculate distance. Let's begin with 22.4.1, the definition of a bow. So once again, a bow of any type which complies with the common meaning of the word bow as used in target archery. You can have a handle or riser, no shoot through. You can have a grip and two flexible limbs, ending in a tip with a string nock and a single string. So once again, no shoot through frames or risers, no compound cams or wheels, no multiple cables, single, stick and string. That's the definition of a bow. Held in one hand by the handle, the other on the string. The riser is a laminated construction and includes wooden laminates or made of one piece of wood. So to be clear, this is wood only, no metal, no carbon. The bow may be a takedown type, and it may incorporate factory installed fittings for the riser, stabilizer, bushing, so on. So you can't use stabilizers, but you are allowed to have the bushings if they're factory installed. A good example of this would be the typical Samick Sage or Black Hunter bows, which are commercially available. They do have the bushings and fittings for extra things like sights and stabilizers, but you can't use them in the trad division. So you can have the mounting, but you can't mount anything on it. That's just because the bows usually come with them pre-drilled. Okay, the bow described above shall be bare, like we said, no accessories except for an arrow rest, and free from protrusions, sights or sighting marks, blemishes, other reference marks within the bow window area, which can be used for aiming. So again, no stripes or paints or scratches, which can be used for aiming or ranging in the window area. Weight inside the bow are permitted if installed during the manufacturing process and not post-construction. This is quite an important definition. You can't put weights on. Unlike bare bow, where you can have weights or vibration dampeners which fit through a ring, you cannot put any extra weights on the bow. If the bow already has a weight inside the bow during manufacturing, that's okay, but you can't add any after its construction, so no extra weights. Any such weights should be completely invisible on the exterior of the riser and be covered by laminates applied during this construction with no visible holes, plugged holes, covers or caps, with the exception of the original manufacturer's inlay or insert logo. So again, no weights. You can't have any external weights on the bow. Now we've got all these clarifications, and I said before, trad has more limitations to keep it purer to the intention of trad. There's a lot of divergence between this and bare bow and one recurve, so let's go through all these exceptions. Alright, firstly, shout out to the Swiss. So what exactly is a bow window? All these things have to be defined. So the interpretation request is whether the side of the bow window must be slanted over the full length of the window and rounded off at the point where the window intersects with the bow top limb, and 2, the side of the bow window can be straight and end with a right angle, and if the window can end in a right angle, does it have a minimum length? Great question. So what exactly is the window? So these are the diagrams here. Are these allowed? So the bow window designs shown in the diagrams below are legal except at the bow shown the photo with the 90-degree angle at the top of the side window, and the second example diagram are not legal in any division where both sides are not permitted. The flat section at the top of the sight window is too easily used for aiming and ranging. For divisions which do not permit both sides, the top of the sight window must incorporate a radius, so nothing to provide any flat horizontal section. This is good. Okay, so this is legal. A lot of bows have this window here where it's part of the riser, so it goes upwards. That's legal. This one is legal. The very sharp bend here, that's completely legal. But you can't have this 90-degree shape here. Most bows don't have this, but if you do have this, this is not allowed. And the rationale is this sharp angle, the flat plane here, can be used as a ranging and sighting tool. And to be fair, a lot of us who shoot bare bow, especially when we learn, often do use the bow itself as a ranging tool. Like you might shoot gap with the point of the arrow pointed off target, but a lot of us who shoot quote instinctively will use a point on the bow as a reference point. If the bow isn't designed for that, that's fine because it's quite vague. You can't really aim very accurately with a curved window. But if you have a 90-degree window, that can most definitely be used to aim or range with. So that 90-degree angle on the bow window is not allowed. Second clarification, this is the instinctive bow and IOF system. Now, I want to clarify one more thing. I should have done it before. The traditional archery division used to be called the instinctive division. So it used to be instinctive and longbow. They changed the name of traditional to instinctive. Instinctive is quite of a misleading misnomer because most archers were not shooting instinctive. They were shooting gap shooting or face walking. They were not instinctive shooting. You can't string walk, which we'll clarify later. But you're definitely not shooting instinctive. I think the word instinctive was a bit of a legacy term from basically not sights. It's changed to traditional, which in turn has its own rabbit hole of definitions and disagreements. But basically, traditional means no sights for the purpose of this rule set. So you'll see quite a few of the rules have instinctive, which refers to the old name of the rule set. It's the same thing as traditional. Okay, so the Field 3 Archery Committee has requested interpretation as to what constitutes an appropriate limb locking system for the second limb on bows used in the instinctive bow division or trad division, and whether a bow with international limb fitting or IOF may be used in the instinctive bow division. The bow may include a single adjustable limb for tilt adjustment only, but may not have adjustable limb pockets for bow weight adjustment. This is interesting. So, those that don't know, IOF limbs have a limb bolt which can turn in or out. It's mostly used for tuning, but it can also be used to change draw weight. Now, again, these bows are not meant to have them. Are these allowed? Are these limb pockets of adjustments allowed? So this is the determination. It's that picture here. So this is what I'm talking about. I'll put other B-roll footage of any bow I have. Can you have these limb pockets where you can turn in and out for tuning or sideways like this? Can you have these? Let's go. The question constitutes an appropriate limb locking system for the second limb in the instinctive division is subjective. Article 22.4.1 states that the bow may not have adjustable limb pockets. However, as long as one pocket is locked down and cannot be adjusted during competition, the technical committee believes that this is an adequate solution for the instinctive bow division or traditional division. Adjustable limb pockets would not be allowable if we follow the absolute definition of the rule. However, and this is a critical point, there are almost no bows on the market that could truly follow this rule to the letter. We understand that there is not any one best solution for locking down a limb on an adjustable limb pocket. The judges at their discretion will determine if the fix of one limb is adequately secured and cannot be moved during competition. In this case, IOF limbs would be legal as long as one limb is satisfactorily locked down to a point that the judges are satisfied it cannot be altered during competition. So to clarify, so when you have this limb bolt, alright, normally this limb bolt is not allowed. And by the way, you wouldn't really have a metal riser. There has to be wood for the purposes of the competition. So by definition, the trad or the instinctive division can't use these risers. But if you have a wooden riser with an IOF limb pocket, is it legal? So by definition, no. But because many bows in the market now that are legal otherwise would have these limb bolts, the compromise is you have to lock at least one down. And the idea is you can't use your wrenches to change the tiller or tune the bow halfway through the competition. It must be set and therefore having at least one limb pocket locked satisfactory by judge's call is the compromise. What does this mean? So one alternative to locking down the limb is as follows. Although the two risers in the photos are not permitted because these are like metal bows, the weight adjustment bolt is virtually the same. There are other types of limb bolts and limb locking methods, but the idea of locking one limb down so it cannot be adjusted further is the same. The concept is to place metal or hard plastic spacer or washers between the riser and the limb adjustment bolt flange, with the blue arrows point. So basically put a washer here so you can't adjust the bolt during competition. If during competition a judge found space between the spacer washers or riser flange, then the judge would know the bolt has been tampered with. This solution gives the athlete the opportunity to set the bow weight he or she wants, find or make hard spaces that fill the section, and lock the limb down securely. Or the athlete could turn the one limb bolt to maximum with no spacer as long as it could not be adjusted further. If the judge requests, the athlete must demonstrate that the bolt cannot be tightened further on the spacer or washers. By using this application to lock down a limb, no bows are ruined and it works as a solid non-adjustable limb. Note, the spacers or washers must be made of hard material, blah blah blah. That's basically it. It's one alternate method, it's not necessary for everything. So sorry about that, it's my phone. But that's completely fine. So the idea here is you can't adjust the bolt. And the reason why this is a thing in traditional is that you can basically sight or change the point on distance by adjusting the tiller. This is something that barebow does, but it's legal in barebow. But by adjusting the tiller, you can basically sight with the bow. Like if you know a certain distance, for example, you walk to say a 30-meter target, then you can point on at one particular distance, and then for a different distance, you can adjust tiller bolts and then be point on for a different distance. And that's not really in the spirit of traditional / instinctive. So therefore, you can't have tiller bolts which are adjustable. Therefore, the compromise is as long as you can lock down, for example, have a washer or make it all the way in, and you can show that you haven't moved the tiller bolt during competition, then that's legal. So you can have the tiller bolt, but you can't adjust it. Instinctive bow limb pocket interpretation from Norway. So they have a picture here of a bow with two adjustable tiller bolts. Around both bolts, there is a rubber piece that seems to function as a dampener for limb vibrations. This can be replaced by a brass bolt and nylon washer to avoid the dampening function. If one of the two rubber spaces is replaced with a brass bolt as described, can the other tiller bolt be left with the rubber spacer under instinctive bow division? Or do you have to change both rubber spacers with fixed material to avoid any damping on the limbs? Okay, that's the bow. So let's zoom in and see what we're looking at here. So you have possible either rubber dampeners, or you can replace it with brass. Is it legal? What does the rule say? It is the unanimous decision of the technical committee that rather shown below in the photo, it may not incorporate a rubber dampener in the limb pocket that must be locked down. So remember, you can have the bolts, but you must lock one down for the competition. And like we said, you can have the bushings, and this is a wood riser. I don't think this is legal. No, this is illegal. I think it's legal. It can be a takedown bow. So this is the trad division, not longbow. This can be takedown, yes. So the intent of the instinctive bow division is to have a simple bow where one limb could be adjusted to set the bow tiller. So yes, you can have tiller bolts to change the tiller, but you're not meant to adjust poundage during competition, because that can be used to change your sight setting or your ranging or your aiming. Limb dampeners are allowed, but not in the location of the limb pocket that must be immovable for each competition the athlete participates in. The TC does not consider the rubber components to be simply spacers, as it would provide some damping capabilities for the limb that requires non-adjustment. To be legal, the rubber spacer dampener will require replacement with a solid component on the limb that must be locked down. The other limb pocket does not require modification and may incorporate a rubber dampener in that limb pocket. So this is quite a strict definition. So again, going with the previous explanation, you can have tiller bolts because you are allowed to adjust the tiller for the sake of tuning. but you can't change it or be able to change it in a competition, which means one limb bolt must be locked down, the other one is okay. So the definition here is you must replace any rubber dampener with a solid spacer for the lockdown limb pocket. The other one is okay. Clarification on traditional division interpretation. This actually references the change of the division. So I'm not fully aware of the specific wording of the motion, but basically in 2021 and as of 2022, the World Archery Congress basically replaced the instinctive division. So like I said earlier, this used to be instinctive and this was replaced with traditional, which means some of the definitions had to be clarified for the purpose of making it suitable for traditional and not specific to instinctive, because the word instinctive is quite misleading. So this covers some clarifications on wording. I don't think this is too important to go through, but some of these will come up later on in the rulebook. But here we go. The riser is of laminate construction and includes wooden laminates or made of one-piece wood. Specific for the materials must be wood or wood laminate. If the riser includes wood laminates, the riser must contain at least 2 wood laminates within the ridge construction of the riser. The wood laminates must be present through the entire length of the riser to be legal. The riser, not the whole bow. The limbs are separate from the riser. The riser must have laminates through the entire riser. Any wood laminates must be visible and be easily verified as wood by the judge. This is important. So you can't have wood/carbon as an example, or foam. Same with the limbs, same with the riser. So it's either one piece wood, or if it is laminate, it must be visible through the entire bow. You can't paint the bow or coat it in a way that will obscure the laminates. There's no restriction on the length of the riser, but you can't have hidden laminates. So again, I think the purpose here is you can't like sneak in illegal materials on the bow. So it must be visible. Next one, bows may have adjustable limbs for poundage and tilt adjustment. The clarification is the limb pocket at each end at the riser may allow for adjustment of poundage and draw weight, tilt and lateral alignment. So again, the riser can have limb pockets, that can have limb bolt. That's fine. It's legal to have a limb bolt for the sake of tuning. As I said earlier though, you can't be able to adjust it in a competition. You must lock one down. Next one, when shooting, the index finger or middle finger must be within 3 millimeters of the nock or touch the nock. Split finger or 3 fingers under. When shooting split finger, a finger separated between 2 fingers, the fingers to prevent pinching may be used. A single anchor or face walking is permitted. String walking is not permitted. We'll go through this rule later on. But the clarification is the athlete may choose to shoot with either 3 fingers under the nock or with 1 finger above the nock and the remaining fingers below the nock. The athlete may not change finger position on the string during the competition, as this is string walking and is not permitted. And that's a key rule we'll go through momentarily. Alright, next we have the wood laminate on traditional division riser interpretation. This is a chunky visual document because it goes through a nice visual clarification on what is allowed in traditional. And these are commonly commercially available bow risers that can be used in trad. So are these legal? Why or why not? And just to clarify, this is for World Archery, not for other events. This may be okay for other events. World Archery has its own definition. So are these legal? So thanks to Norway for making this clarification. So the majority decision, not unanimous, majority, if the riser is not entirely made from wood, then it must contain wood laminates that run the entire length of the riser. For the wood laminates to be considered as running through the entire length of the riser, the wood laminates must begin in where the limbs are mounted. The wood laminates may be broken by the shaping and cutting out of the grip. The wood laminates must be an integral part of the ridge construction of the riser and cannot be a cosmetic addition. As a visual guideline for judging risers for the trad division, the photographs below provide a review of all the types of risers that should be allowed or disallowed. Photograph 1 shows 4 different risers. All the risers shown have full-length vertically laminated wood within the structure. All these risers conform to the rules and are legal as far as wood laminate is concerned. So typical beginner riser, you got the wooden laminate in the limb pocket there, going all the way down the bow. Same with this one here, the vertical stripes. I've got these bows. That's fine. We have the weird shaped one over here that goes all the way through the riser. That's legal. And we have this one here, again, same thing. It's kind of colorful cosmetic, but they do have a function in the riser. It's vertical, that's fine. All of these are legal. Photograph 2 shows a traditional quiver riser with wood laminates. However, the laminates do not run through the entire length of the riser, with the exception of the grip. It is not possible to tell from the photograph what the black material is. If the black material is not wood, then the riser does not conform to the rules and is not legal. If the black material is wood, then this riser would be legal as far as the wood is concerned. Let's see. Now, what's the distinction? So it doesn't go through the entire riser. So compared to the top limbs where you can see the laminate strips go through the entire riser, this one doesn't. It's cut off by the grip. Okay, that's fine. All right, if the laminates are interrupted by the grip, that's fine. The question mark is what the black part is. So by this photo, we can't tell if it's wood. If it's not wood, it's not legal. If it is wood, it is legal. So again, I think it's the judge's call. If they can see it's wood, then they'll pass it. But with the photo, it's not enough evidence to see from the photo if it is. It probably is, but we can't see from the photo. So that's the clarification. Number 3. 3 risers with wood laminates. However, the laminates do not run through the entire length of the riser, with the exception of the grip. It is not possible to tell from the photograph what the black material is. If the black material is not wood, then these risers do not conform to the rules and not legal. If it is, the same thing as the other ones. The laminates don't go through the entire riser because the grip breaks it up, and that's completely legal. You can break the laminates with the grip. And the same question is, well, we can't tell the black material. If it's wood, it's legal. If it's not wood, it's not. Again, these are most likely wooden risers. We just can't tell from the photo. What you gotta see it and touch it. But that's probably wood. Number 4 shows a single riser that's multiple vertical laminates that run to the entire length of the riser. This is legal. It's wood. They can see it's wood, that's fine. So, number 5 shows a single riser where the cord riser is likely phenolic and laminated with wood with full length of riser. This is legal. Yeah, okay. So basically, all these bows are legal. So a lot of these risers have cosmetic colors and shapes, and that's completely fine because these are functional and structural. They may look pretty, but they have actual function in the riser, and therefore all of these are legal for traditional underworld archery. Traditional division riser interpretation. Here we go again. What it is asking us is asking us to clarify what exactly is a traditional riser. So there are aware of confusion as to which riser conform to the rules and are considered legal. Let's zoom in for this one. So it contains a statement: the riser is of laminated construction and includes wooden laminates or made of one piece of wood. This clearly means that if the riser is not made of wood, then it must contain some wood laminated into it during the manufacturing process. Questions were raised as to what is the definition of wooden laminates. Therefore, clarification. So, Article 22.4.1 mentions wooden laminates, plural, meaning more than one. In the clarification, this statement is written: if the riser includes wood laminates, the riser must contain at least 2 wood laminates within the original construction of the riser. However, it is now realized that insisting on 2 wood laminates within the construction of the riser is not in the best interest of the traditional bow division. This statement could unintentionally limit the number of risers that would be legal. As an example, it would be possible to have 2 almost identical risers, one containing a piece of plywood and the other a single piece of wood, and both laminated with other materials. Since plywood is a laminated wood, it would be legal, However, the almost identical riser containing a single piece of wood would not be legal. This is not logical and a scenario that this committee wishes to avoid. So there's retraction, okay. The retraction is it doesn't require 2 wood laminates. And we've read the updated version, so it doesn't have this, but yeah, it needs to have at least 1 wood laminate through the entire length of the riser. That's what it means. Phew, that's almost the entirety of the rules for trad. It's just what exactly is a traditional or instinctive bow. And it comes down to you need to be made of wood, either single piece or takedown. You can use laminates, so laminated wood, but you're not meant to use like other materials which you can hide and say, oh, it's wood. It has to be visibly wood or wood laminate. That's my understanding. I'm not a judge here, but the spirit is traditional bows are meant to be made from wood, and therefore the bows can be quite flexible in modern designs, but it must conform to what we generally understand to be a traditional bow. Okay, so we can finally move on. 22411, multicolored bow risers and trademarks located on the inside of the upper and lower limbs are permitted. However, if the area within the sight window is colored in such a way that it could be used for aiming, it must be taped over. Same with bare bow. You can have manufacturer branding and decals and stickers on the limbs, but you can't have anything on the bow. It's the riser, specifically the bow window, that you can use to aim or range. They include stripes, patterns. You can't look at the riser and use it as a way to sight. So that's one big limitation for some bow designs where you might have specific, like, decals or stripes. You can't have that. 22412. Limb dampeners are allowed, so not vibration dampeners like stabilizers or the foam or rubber things you can screw on. You can attach them directly on the limb. So basically, limb savers are allowed. They're meant to like reduce vibration to the bow. It protects the bow, so that's okay. 2242, you can use a bowstring of any number of strands. 22421, they can be of multicolored strands and serving. It may have a center serving to accommodate the drawing fingers and 1 or 2 knocking points, to which maybe add the servings if it's arrow knock. So same as usual, bowstring allowed, knocking points allowed. At each end there is a loop which is placed on the string nocks when braced. No lip or nose mark, in other words no kisser button for the lips or the nose. The serving on the string should not end within the athlete's vision of full draw. So that middle serving can't be visible. The end of it can't be visible in the archer's field of vision when full draw, which means you can't use it as a rear sight. The bowstring should not in any way assist aiming through the use of people, marking, and other means. This includes having any kind of marking on the serving or string, which might be used as an aiming, ranging, rear sight, so on. 22422, also permitted are string silencers, provided they are located no closer than 30 centimeters from the knocking point. So you can't have those fluffy balls, that are stuck on the string. There are restrictions on how close they are to the knocking point, so you can't put them basically near the center serving in your field of view. They can't be used as an aiming tool, but they are allowed on the bow. You can use an arrow rest, which cannot be adjustable. So this is important. When you use a bare bow or recurve arrow rest, you can adjust them. For traditional, you cannot. You can shoot off the ledge or the shelf. You can shoot off an elevated rest, but you cannot adjust the rest. 22431. The arrow rest can be a simple plastic self-adhesive arrow rest, a feather rest as supplied by the manufacturer, or the athlete can use the bow shelf. If the athlete chooses to use the shelf may be covered with any tape or material on the shelf only. The vertical part of the sight window may be protected by material which should not raise more than 1 centimeter above the resting arrow or be thicker than 3 millimeters, measured from the riser directly against the material. No other types of arrow rests must be allowed or should be allowed. In other words, you can have a shelf rug. There are limitations over how big it can be, but you can have a shelf rug to protect the shelf. You can have extra padding on the riser to protect the riser, but they can't be used to adjust or provide any aiming reference for the user. 2244, no draw check device may be used. We've gone through in recurve and in barebow. Draw check device means no clickers, so nothing on the bow can be used as a subconscious release aid. So no draw length indicator and no audible or tactile feedback. So you must draw and release the bow manually with no device that can help in when to release. 2245, string walking is not permitted. We'll explain it in barebow already. String walking is when you move your fingers up and down the string as a rear sight, so you can adjust for distance and aim using the fingers. In this definition, we'll go through a bit later, you must touch the arrow nock in order to qualify as not string walk, which means you can't change how you hold the string. So if a judge sees you move your fingers off from your normal spot, then that's string walking, you may be disqualified. 2246, you can use arrows, you can't use broadheads, that's a basic definition. 22461, it defines the arrows the same as usual. You can have arrow tip, nocks, fletching, and if you want cresting or wraps, you can. The shaft can't be more than 9.3 millimeters. The tips can be 9.4 millimeters, but the shaft must be 9.3. All the arrows must be the same color fletching, same color nock, same color cresting. You can't mix and match, and the athlete's name or the initials must be on the shaft. No tracer nocks, no electronics on the arrow. 2247, finger protection good. That means finger tab, finger tape, finger gloves. You can protect the finger. That's completely fine. Nothing wrong with that. You can add marks, I think. No, sorry. This is traditional. You cannot add marks. So unlike barebow, where you can make your own marks on your finger tab or your glove, if you're using a glove, you cannot do that on traditional. That's just a blanket rule. No markings, no pre-made manufacturer, no personal marks. Thumb rings, same as with recurve and barebow. You can draw with the thumb, but you cannot use a thumb ring. That's the plastic or the metal thumb rings by the definition of World Archery. Okay, not international traditional archery. This is World Archery trad division, which is different from Asiatic. You can't use a thumb ring because the thumb ring design in many cases acts as a draw aid. You can put the string on the ring shape or lip. It can hold the string for you. Therefore, this is not allowed by World Archery rules in World Archery competition. 22471. This is another difference from barebow. An anchor plate or similar device attached to the finger protection or tab for the purpose of anchoring is not permitted. In other words, those extra accessories on the finger tab, if they're meant to be used to help anchor, you cannot use it in traditional. When shooting, the index finger or middle finger must be within 3 millimeters of the nock or touch the nock. And that's what we said with the previous interpretation. You can use split finger, so one finger over, 2 fingers under, or you can use 3 under. But you must touch the nock or be within 3 millimeters. This is virtually touching the nock. That's how you stop string walking. You might argue, how do you define string walking? You could argue that you always hold the string like 5 fingers under, but by definition under traditional, you must touch the nock or be 3 millimeters within the nock. That's why you can't string walk. A single anchor or face walking is permitted, so you can change where you anchor, or you can use a single anchor, but you cannot string walk. You are allowed to use a finger separator, that's the finger space on finger tabs. That's legal if you're using split finger, but otherwise no string walking. And accessories are permitted, same sort of thing, arm guard, chest guard, bow sling, finger sling, quiver. You can wear the quiver on the belt, back, hip, or mount it in the ground, but you can't attach it to the bow. I know a lot of trad bows have a mounting for a bow mounted quiver. You can't actually mount the quiver on the bow. You must carry your quiver on you or put it in the ground. And notably, you can, same thing with the other divisions, you can raise your feet or part of your foot as an attachment from the shoe, but you can't do it in a way which obstructs other athletes at the shooting peg or protrude more than 2 centimeters past the shoe. This is very specific and kind of obscure, but yeah, basically can't have any extra like brace or stand which extends past the feet that much, but you can elevate yourself if you need to. And as I said before, the arrow quivers can't be mounted on the bow. And that's the end of traditional. I won't cover longbow. The video's already too long. Get it? Longbow. So we'll do longbow next time. The rules are actually quite different, specific for longbow, so I can't cover it in the same video. And that's traditional for World Archery. Just once again, this is World Archery traditional and more specific 3D and field. You don't normally see trad in a target event. And likewise, because it's not a World Archery target division, you might not see it in your regional or national level organizations. If you do have a trad division, it may have a different rule set. So again, specific to one particular event in World Archery sanctioned events, your trad might differ. Anyway, hope you found that interesting and helpful, and hopefully we'll see you again in future rulebook videos. Enjoy!